The email arrived at 3:12 a.m., cold and merciless, like a verdict handed down in the dark where no one could fight back. By sunrise, her future had already been erased. Mira had fallen asleep with her textbook still open, a pen resting between her fingers, the soft hum of a desk lamp glowing beside her. She never heard the notification. She never saw the words that would shatter everything she had worked for. But her father did. Armin Qureshi stood in the dim light of the kitchen, his phone trembling in his hand as he read the message again and again, as if repetition might soften its cruelty. Effective immediately, your daughter Mira Qureshi is expelled from Westbridge Academy due to violations of academic integrity policies. No warning. No meeting. No explanation beyond vague accusations and a signature from the school board. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes the Stories. Stories like this matter, and your support helps keep them alive. Armin didn't wake Mira right away. He stood there for a long time, staring out the window as the first pale threads of dawn crept into the sky. He knew his daughter. He knew the quiet discipline she carried like armor, the way she stayed up late not because she had to, but because she believed effort was the only path forward. Mira didn't cheat. Mira didn't cut corners. Mira fought for every inch she earned. And yet, in a single sentence, they had stripped her of everything. When Mira finally woke, she found her father sitting across from her bed, his eyes tired but steady. He handed her the phone without a word. She read it once, then again, and then her hands began to shake. It wasn't loud grief. It wasn't dramatic. It was something quieter, more devastating. It was the sound of trust breaking inside a person who had always believed that doing the right thing would protect her. She didn't cry immediately. She asked questions instead. What did I do? How could this happen? Can we call them? There must be a mistake. Armin answered each question with patience, even when he didn't have answers himself. He promised her they would fix it. He promised her they would fight. But deep inside, he could feel something else rising, a slow, controlled anger that refused to be silenced. Westbridge Academy wasn't just any school. It was a place of prestige, of influence, of carefully curated reputations. Parents paid fortunes to send their children there, believing they were buying opportunity, fairness, and excellence. But Armin had seen enough of the world to know that institutions like that didn't always run on truth. Sometimes they ran on convenience. By mid-morning, the story had already begun to spread among parents and students. Whispers traveled faster than facts. Some said Mira had been caught cheating on a final exam. Others claimed she had hacked into the school's grading system. The rumors grew louder with every retelling, each version more damaging than the last. And Mira, who had spent years building a name based on integrity, found herself buried beneath lies she couldn't even understand. Armin drove to the school that same day. The building stood tall and polished, its glass walls reflecting a world that seemed untouched by injustice. Inside, everything looked normal. Students walked the halls, teachers carried on with their routines, and administrators spoke in calm, measured tones. It was as if nothing had happened. As if a girl's life hadn't just been upended overnight. He asked to speak with the principal. He was told the principal was unavailable. He asked for the vice principal. He was redirected to an administrative assistant who spoke in rehearsed sentences and avoided eye contact. He demanded answers, and in return, he received policies. Rules. Procedures. Words designed to create distance instead of clarity. They told him the decision had been made by the school board. They told him it was final. That was the moment something inside Armin shifted. He wasn't a man who sought conflict. He had spent most of his life working quietly, building a small but successful consulting firm, raising his daughter with values that prioritized honesty over shortcuts. But he also wasn't a man who walked away when something was wrong. And this was deeply, undeniably wrong. That evening, while Mira sat in her room staring at the walls that once held her dreams, Armin began making calls. He reached out to other parents. At first, many were hesitant. They spoke carefully, as if even questioning the school might put their own children at risk. But as the conversations continued, patterns began to emerge. Stories surfaced of unfair disciplinary actions, of complaints quietly buried, of decisions made without transparency. Mira wasn't the first. She was just the latest. One parent shared how their son had been accused of plagiarism based on faulty software, only for the case to be dismissed quietly weeks later. Another spoke of a scholarship student who had been pushed out after raising concerns about grading discrepancies. Each story added another layer to a picture the school had worked hard to keep hidden. Armin didn't stop there. He dug deeper. He requested documentation, reviewed policies, and consulted legal experts. What he found was alarming. The school's disciplinary procedures were vague, allowing for decisions to be made without clear evidence or proper review. There was no requirement for a hearing before expulsion. No obligation to present proof. It was a system built to protect itself, not its students. Meanwhile, Myra's world continued to shrink. Friends stopped calling. Group chats went silent. The girl who had once been at the center of study sessions and shared ambitions now found herself alone, defined by an accusation she couldn't even defend against. She tried to stay strong, but the weight of it all pressed down on her in ways she had never experienced before. Armin saw it. He saw the way her shoulders slumped, the way her voice lost its certainty. And it fueled him even more. Within days, he had gathered enough information to take action. He filed a formal complaint against the school board, citing procedural violations and demanding a full investigation. But he didn't stop at paperwork. He went public. He wrote a detailed account of everything that had happened, supported by evidence and testimonies from other families. He shared it online, not as an attack, but as a call for accountability. The response was immediate. Parents began sharing their own experiences. Alumni spoke out about past injustices. The story spread beyond the school community, catching the attention of local media. Questions were asked. Pressure mounted. And suddenly, the institution that had operated in quiet control found itself under a spotlight it couldn't ignore. The school board called for an emergency meeting. It was held the next morning. Armin walked into that room not as a victim, but as someone who had done his homework. He presented his findings with clarity and precision. He spoke not just about Mira, but about every student who had been affected by a system that lacked fairness. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The truth carried its own weight. Board members shifted in their seats. Some tried to defend their actions, citing policies and precedent. But those defenses began to crumble under scrutiny. Evidence was presented. Contradictions were exposed. And one by one, the certainty that had fueled their decision began to unravel. Then came the turning point. A technical expert, brought in as part of Armin's case, revealed that the software used to flag Mira for academic misconduct had a known error rate. In fact, in her case, the system had misidentified similarities that were, upon closer inspection, completely coincidental. There had been no human review. No verification. Just an automated flag and a rushed decision. The room fell silent. In that silence, the reality of what they had done became impossible to ignore. They hadn't just made a mistake. They had destroyed a student's reputation without due process. They had acted with authority but without responsibility. By the end of the meeting, the outcome was clear. Myra's expulsion was overturned. A formal apology was issued. And perhaps most significantly, the school board announced an immediate suspension of its disciplinary procedures pending a full review. Policies would be rewritten. Safeguards would be implemented. Changes would be made. Armin didn't celebrate. Not right away. He went home first. He found Mira sitting in the same room where everything had begun to fall apart. He sat beside her and handed her a new message. This one was different. This one carried acknowledgement, correction, and something the first message lacked entirely: respect. She read it slowly. And this time, when her hands began to shake, it was because something heavy had finally been lifted. The days that followed weren't easy. Rebuilding trust never is. Some people apologized. Others stayed quiet. But Mira returned to school not as someone who had been broken, but as someone who had endured. And Armin, he returned to his life with the same quiet strength he had always carried. But now, there was something else there too. A reminder that even in systems designed to silence individuals, one voice, steady, determined, and unwilling to accept injustice, could create change. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Stories like Mira's remind us why speaking up matters. And before we end, here's something special for you. Comment, "Justice matters," if you believe every voice deserves to be heard. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person refusing to stay silent to make the world listen.